All right, everybody. Welcome to today's version of the Team Building Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Cuney. You are in for a treat today. We have an amazing guest. I spent a little bit of time before the call getting to know her, and she's amazing. So I'm I am as, if not more, excited to hear a little bit more from her than you guys are, because she has an amazing story. She reminds me of a maybe slightly more successful version of Jeff. I really hope he listens to this podcast today. Right. So what I want to do is I'm going to introduce her. Her name is Jess Lenouvel. Did I say it right, Jess? Lenouvel. I see. And I only practiced.
It was good. I know.
Though. Lenouvel. Yes. Perfect, Jess. And Jess, I'm going to hand it over to you here. We're going to ask you a few questions about where you live now, where you came from, where you started, right? Everything. I just want to remind everybody here that we do have ERS is putting on a team building workshop, and we're putting it on in Omaha, Nebraska. And it's going to be September 19th and September 20th. September 19th is going to be the investor workshop. Clint Bartlett from Dynamic Properties and Jeff Cohn, the man, the myth, the legend, are going to speak all day long on Monday, all about how to invest in real estate properties. The next day is going to be a little bit more of Jeff, and then myself and Logan are going to be speaking on how to build a scalable and profitable, right? Because it doesn't matter if it's scalable, if it's not profitable, real estate team. Okay. And so it's 2 days. It's great. You get a lot of hands-on. It's us all day long for about 12 hours each day. And then we go out, take you out for dinner. It's a really, really, really good time. So now getting past that, let's jump in. Jess, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I kind of have lived my whole life in the real estate industry.
Okay.
My mom has been an agent for 35 years. So,
oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So I grew up like in the back of the car with like a map book as like a little kid. I remember
early forms of GPS. You were the 100%. GPS.
I was the GPS. I was the GPS.
That's awesome.
I started doing my mom's paperwork. She's terrible at paperwork around 13.
All the really good agents are.
And I got my license at 21. So
wow, okay.
I started young. I sold real estate in the greater Toronto area for 14 years. I built a multi 7-figure lean team. Mm-hmm. I kind of was sort of living the real estate dream.
Right.
I had we were highly leveraged. We were extremely profitable. We were having a great time. And I had a bit of an existential crisis in my early 30s.
Ooh,
so
okay.
I just had this maybe it wasn't early 30s. I mean, I'm getting up there, but I had just this moment where I was like, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm serving the wrong people. This isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I think it was because I got into the business so young. I'd been in it for long enough to realize that I'd kind of fallen into it. I don't think that I'd ever actually like really made the choice of like, I would like to sell real estate for my life. But I built this incredible monster. Right. And it was, I was living the dream. When I told my mom I was going to stop selling, the look on her face was like, my daughter has lost her mind. And so it was my husband too was like the panic in his eyes at first. Like, we've built our entire lives over like the income. Like, I think he thought like, oh, she's going to go and do something else and we're not going to have any money.
Right.
But I made the transition and I started selling. So I started building what is now the Listings Lab.
Okay.
And we've been around for about 5 years. We've had several thousand agents come through our programs. What we really focus on now is building 7-figure teams with freedom. So the with freedom part is really important. I wrote a book recently, came out in May, called More Money, Less Hustle.
More money, less hustle. Perfect.
Yeah. Becoming the 7-figure real estate agent. So everything that I just feel like over the years, I've met so many incredibly burnt out agents and so many even team leaders that I'm like, so you built a team and then became your team's assistant.
Yep.
Right.
And I'm like, yes.
So
they created their own prison
here. 1,000%. Right.
Yep.
And so, or they're in a situation where they have 10 agents on their team and they're still, producing 10 times more than anyone else on their team. Right. So there's a lot of inefficiency from more traditional ways of building teams that aren't necessarily the best ways of doing it anymore. I built my business 100% digitally. So digital marketing is my jam. Love it. I'm actually quite introverted. So I can be a good time for short periods of time, but like, don't ask me to like turn it on for like 7 hours at a time. I might die.
I love it. Yes. So you burn hot and then we're done.
Then we're done. Yes. So I realized quite young was I needed to figure out a way that wasn't door knocking and cold calling and like networking and all of these things to build my business, because that wasn't going to serve me long term. Yep. And I would very quickly, energetically become the bottleneck of my business.
Yes.
So there was this brand new thing called Facebook.
What?
And I had it was so trendy at the time, these like mini tiny computers that are like terrible for your eyes. But it was like 2005. Yep. I started building my business on Facebook. And I started building relationships and talking to people and messaging people. And I used to call it prospecting from my PJs. I would sit on my couch in my pajamas with like a cat, and I would just like do my thing. It was like the perfect introverted business building exercise. And it snowballed from there. It turned
so many agents right now just leaned in and turned the volume up. They're like, go on, you're speaking to me.
Yeah. No, it's true. Right. Like, and I think that even if you're an extroverted person, 10 years into this business, you feel a little bit more introverted than when you started, for sure. Because it can be very energetically draining having to human all day, every day. So
human all day. I'm getting that put on a shirt. Dana, write that one down. That's happening.
Right. It's a lot.
It is. It is. Yep.
So
and especially,
I had to figure out a way to do
that's being in your natural state of being high energy and having wonderful interpersonal skills. Imagine if that is not right. And it's your adaptive state.
Yes.
And that we see it every day. They don't know why they're burnout. They just know they're burnout. Right. And they don't realize that they've been using 4 times as much energy as necessary doing things that are not in their natural skill set.
Exactly. And there's nothing that will exhaust you more than doing things that you don't like doing, that you're not particularly great at. Right. And so like, it's just, and the more you actually function and live in your zone of genius, the more energetic, I guess, like surplus you have, because the stuff that you're doing is actually giving you energy and giving you life rather than sucking you dry. So,
and then you have to use it on your personal life. You have that energy to use on your, which is why you're doing all this stuff anyway.
Exactly. And I start my book with what's called the spaghetti incident, which is basically like when I realized initially that my business was broken.
Okay.
It was when I don't even know if we were married we were married. We'd like just gotten married, and we're in this fancy restaurant. It's date night. I'm supposed to be there and present. My Apple Watch is going, my first generation Apple Watch is going nuts. Mm-hmm. And my phone is like sitting next to me on the table. And without even thinking about it, it wasn't even a conscious decision. I spit the spaghetti out of my mouth into my napkin and I answered the phone and got it from the table. And when I came back, I looked at my husband's face and I was like, I'm going to lose him.
And
it
became real.
It became real. And I completely changed the model of my business. That was the beginning of like the team building side of it.
Okay.
To use Tim Ferriss's terms, the eliminate, automate, outsource journey.
Love it.
Right. So we went through, we really started. And as a team, my husband and I like systematically bought my time back so that I wasn't the bottleneck of my business. The first time we hit 7 figures, I did it on my own. It was just, I was a single agent. It was awful. And everybody's looking at you being like, oh my God, she's so successful. Look at these numbers.
How many plaques did you get on stage?
I want to die. I didn't even go to the things. I'm introverted. Right? I didn't want to go and like,
you didn't send somebody?
No, I didn't. I was not interested. I'm like, bring it back to the office and like, I'll put it,
Yep.
And so I didn't have any extra energy to go and like try to talk to a bunch of agents that I wasn't going to get any business from.
Yep.
So it was an awful time. Mm-hmm. And then from there, everything had to shift and everything had to be properly leveraged. So, I started to grow my team.
and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like your husband, when you said we worked on it, is he started working with you, and obviously from the spaghetti moment, you had his buy-in. He's like, absolutely, I will help you do this. Right.
Yeah.
And that's one thing one of the things that I always want to tell people. And when I talk to them early on, especially when they're, just getting into the business, I'm like, your spouse has to buy in. Like you have 100%. They have to get it. They have to be on board with you, because there will be resentment. Right. And there will be things where you will have a spaghetti moment, right? Because you're going 1,000 miles an hour. So, okay. So tell us about when you then decided, okay, I've got to start leveraging, buying my time back. I got my husband on board. What were some of the first things that you did?
So our digital marketing side of things was really tight and was working really well, which is why I was in the situation, and it worked faster than I thought, which is why I was in the situation I was in. So the first thing that we did was we looked through everything and figured out what could be automated. My husband is extremely resourceful. People think he's incredibly techie, but he's just incredibly resourceful and can teach himself anything. So he started building out a lot of automations to reduce the amount of manual follow-up that I had to do. Right. So I've always been kind of a student of human psychology, which is why our marketing had performed so well, because I actually understood how to take someone from stranger to client.
Got it.
Now, once all of that got automated, it compounded on its own. So then the next thing that I needed was administrative help. And at the time, I actually, if I was doing it again today, I probably would have done it a little differently. The administrative help, I probably would have, I would have started overseas, but at the time I wasn't even really, I don't even know if I was even really aware of like the possibility of using virtual assistants at the time. But so it was agents and administration and marketing. And my husband was the marketing support. That's really what we ended up with. I never built a huge team. I really love the small, lean, highly productive team. I say to people even now, I would rather let's say if we have 100 deals or 200 deals or 500, whatever that number is, I'm going to use 100 because I can't math quickly in other ways.
Everybody was like, thank God she's using 100 right now.
Like I can't. Yeah. And I don't want to look stupid when I mess up the math. So
everybody's like, never mind. She added wrong. I'm out. She doesn't know what she's talking about.
And I wouldn't have even known. So we've got 100 deals. I would rather have, 2 people doing 50 deals each than having, 10 people doing 10 deals. Right. Not only from an efficiency standpoint, a time and support standpoint, but also just from like a resources standpoint. Right. Like it is cheaper to run a lean team. So for me, that was always the main goal. Is I never wanted to build something that was like, oh my gosh, we have 20 agents. Right. I wanted something small and lean, and that I could go on. I remember the first time I went on vacation and like didn't have internet access on the vacation. As soon as we pulled into port, I flew my computer open and everything was fine. And I remember thinking, and I just sort of slowly closed the computer. Right. I was like, okay, we're good. We're going to back away.
Yes.
And it was the best feeling in the world.
So I love that. So because right now you just spoke to a lot of people, because we do interview a lot of team leaders who have, I got 15 agents, I got 30 agents, right? And they built these almost mini brokerages, right? That they move around. So, and we talk about all the challenges and struggles and ways to leverage when it comes to that. But a lot of people listening right now, we know the average team in the United States has 4 agents, right? We know that. And so you just spoke to a lot of people like, so I can make this successful without having 20 agents.
100%.
Right? And I don't think that they think that a lot of times, right? But that every system or setup comes with its struggles. And so tell me how you would mitigate if your team is doing 100 units and you have 2 agents doing 50. What happens if Jeff always used the analogy, what happens if Andy gets hit by a bus tomorrow? How does it still function? What happens if one of your agents decides wins the lottery, right? Or we'll do something a little more pleasant than getting hit by a bus. But
winning the lottery sounds better.
There we go. Well, yeah. What was it? The last one was just $1 billion or something. So say they win the Powerball or whatever it is, and
they're not coming back to work.
They are not. You're not even going to hear from them, right? There's all of a sudden they're just gone, right? They show up next to you in the Bahamas, which we're going to get to in a minute, but. But so tell me what happens. How do you mitigate that? Because right now, a lot of people are thinking, man, if one of my agents leaves me and they're doing 50% of my business, what do I do? So how do you help mitigate those things?
Here's the thing. When you have a team that's that strong, you will always have people who want to join the team and who are waiting for you to have space. And then if you have really great onboarding, training, standard operating procedures, really great systems, you can onboard someone and get them up to speed in a week or two.
Love it. So you always have a bench, right? You always have a bench of talent where you're kind of like, you know what, maybe not right now, but I'm always going to be keeping the communication open.
Yeah, exactly.
Love that.
And, you know, let's say you have 2 agents doing 50 deals each and your marketing is killing it. You hire someone else and that person comes on and starts with, 20 deals a year. And then eventually also gets to 50 deals a year. I think that's why I've always been of the mind, like I've never wanted, and I don't teach hiring part-time agents. I think that, in order to have the availability of bandwidth to continue to grow without stretching the resources too thin, I think that that's really important. And I also think that, from an efficiency standpoint, even with the team, if you have an ops manager or you have even a really, really, really great admin who essentially is operating as an ops manager, that person is going to have a much easier job managing 3 people than managing 20 people. Right. And so, I talk to a lot of teams now that are like, oh, I have 3 admins. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the efficiencies. Let's do an energy audit or a task audit and see what's on everybody's plate. And then I'll look at it and I'll be like, okay, well, this entire person's job can be automated with software. So here's like $40,000 to $50,000 that you're essentially wasting here. Right. And a lot of it just comes down to money efficiency, time efficiency. And because so many of us were taught the same model from the same books growing up, a lot of us don't think of automation as a core piece of the leverage or the scale side of the business, because we were taught right from the beginning that as soon as you hit bandwidth, the next thing to do is to hire. And we don't live in that world anymore. We lived in this, like that in my mom's world, 100%. She did not have technology. She didn't have the ability, like Zapier. She didn't know what that was, but to this day, she doesn't know what that is.
Hey, and what though? You know that a lot of agents listening to this podcast right now just said, how do they spell that? And they're Googling it, right? They're like, right. You just blew somebody's mind.
It's your best friend. It's your best friend.
Yes,
it will literally change your life.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of it just really comes down to efficiency. And there's a lot of not only time inefficient teams out there, but also financially inefficient teams. And there's a lot of people out there who don't think that they can afford to do things that they can because they haven't gone about it or they're not thinking about it from a different angle.
So and I love that. I'm so happy that you brought that up. I love that point that you made. And obviously not only did you just make the point because you read it in a book, you lived it, right? Yeah. You did it. And so what it makes me think of is we talk to a lot of people across the country, just like I'm sure you do. And they say things like, oh, I need marketing now because I'm ready to grow. So they hire a $75,000 a year marketing person and they have 3 agents and themselves. And then they hire a transaction coordinator for another 50,000. And that transaction coordinator is handling 75 deals. And you know what I mean? And they hire these full-time positions for these part-time roles. And I always say to them, I'm like, you've got to stop. I go, why don't you find a talented person, right, that can do multiple things, create the position around the talent instead of trying to cram this one talented person into this one role, whatever that role may be.
And I think a lot of the time what ends up happening too is you have one talented person and you stretch that person so thin because you're trying not to spend more money. And then you end up losing this incredibly talented person who really could eventually have become your integrator or become the ops manager and could have run your business while you come and live with me in the Bahamas.
Right, exactly. And you wasted their talent because you just had them doing 5 things then one thing amazing. And that one thing could have led to your growth.
Yes.
The one thing I do want to go back on is when you were talking about what happens if I lose, one of my agents or 50% of my business. A lot of agents and team leaders think that they are business owners, but they still think like agents.
Salespeople.
Yes, exactly. And if you are a true business owner, right? If I'm selling 100 units and that makes me X amount of dollars, guess how much that person spends? X amount of dollars, right? And so when you think about it, you're like, Well, how much money are you going to spend next year? I don't know. Tell me how many units I'm doing, and that'll be the amount, right? And so they don't think about it as, well, if I'm selling 100 units and I got 2 agents doing it, one agent pays my bills and one agent, you know what I mean, goes into whatever, right? Reserves, all this kind of stuff.
My biggest pet peeve in real estate in general is, and I say this I've said this in so many times, and agents look at me with like this deer in headlights look, where I'll say, your commissions, your GCI every year is not your income.
Yep.
That is your business revenue.
Yes.
And
they don't know.
That's one of the most frustrating things for me about, the way that licensing works, just in general, is that people are taught they're taught how to not get sued, but they're never actually taught how to actually run a real business, or even to set themselves up initially so that they're protected, or how to even think like a business owner. And
I was going to say, how many teams have you coached yourself where you have an agent or a team leader who's a rainmaker, right? They're crushing it, doing a bunch of deals, running around with, 60 hours a week and leaving their loved one at the dinner table alone while they go answer the phone. And then they have 5 agents and they're doing a bunch of business. And you realize that the amount of money that those 5 agents are making them is costing them in the end money. It costs me more to equip, train, hold accountable, everything else, right? And they would make more money if they were just a solo agent.
I see it all the time.
They cannot give up the fact that they get to go on stage and be in the top 10 for some award of a thing. You know what I mean? And all of this kind of stuff. And it's like, and so we start asking different questions. And I want to say, I don't care about your GCI. I don't care about how many units you did. What was your profit? Were you able to profit what you needed to? And
it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep.
Thank you. Yes, 100%. And we would sit back there and we'd have a person, I sold 110 units last year and there were 3 of us, right? But they profited a lot of money. Then you talk to somebody else like, I have 32 agents and we did, X hundred millions of dollars in production. And right, profited half of what that 3-person team did.
Yeah, 100%.
Because they're running this machine, right? That they don't even understand how it works.
So I have a coach who I've worked with for a long time. He's a great friend of mine. And he uses the analogy of, you have 2 accounts. You have your ego account and you have your bank account, and you cannot fill both at the same time. So every decision you make and everything that you do will fill either your ego account or your bank account, and you get to choose.
I love it.
And so I think so many people, especially in the real estate space, fill their ego account before anything else. I had an agent in one of my programs who I was looking at his budgets. And I was like, what the hell is this? And he's like, it's a billboard. And I was like, how much do you generate from that billboard every year? And he's like, well, I mean, it's brand awareness and it's, and I was like, no, this is 100% an ego move.
Yep.
Right. People, and this isn't even an ego move for your for your clients or for prospects. This is an ego move within the real estate industry.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. It is. And my favorite question to ask somebody when you can tell, because we have to go to all these conferences and stuff too, and they want to flex and you're just introducing yourself to somebody. And I'd rather hear what somebody does on the weekends when they're not working, right? Those are the kinds of conversations I want to have now. Yeah. But you can tell when somebody wants to flex on you. And I say, that's awesome. I go, so tell me what are you worth per hour based on the activities that you do?
100%.
They never know. And I'm like, oh my God, just think how much more time you could buy back if you actually knew what you were worth per activity. And they don't.
Well, and I are speaking the same language.
Not only do they not know it, but then I know they're not teaching their agents to do that. No. Right. And that is where that agents, we know those agents, right? We call it burnout. And I feel so bad. I was just talking to a brand new agent, a husband and wife couple that joined our brokerage, and they've been with us 1 year and they just did $10 million. They hit $10 million in production. I'm like, well, that's great. But now you've got to be able, right, to think like a business owner. We're having this kind of, they're like, we know, we come to your training, that kind of thing. And I said, well, here's the deal. I go, you guys have to know, because new agents have all of the energy and the fire to do whatever. And it's wasted on not knowing what to do, right? Or filling someone else's ego bucket, like you said, or ego account, right? And I'm just like, and that makes me so sad. It just makes me so sad, because I was that for 12 months when I first started. I was at a brokerage. They gave me a cubicle and a phone book and they said, go get them. Just make sure that your fee check doesn't bounce. Right. And I'm like, okay, go, I guess. Right. And then I finally found somebody who knew what they were doing and was able to teach me the right things. And I'm like, oh, this isn't as mysterious and hard as I thought it was going to be. Right.
It's not taking shots in the dark every day.
Exactly. There's no reason to make this hard, but if you're not taught where to spend that energy, right.
Yeah.
Whether it's in your adaptive or natural state, then you're going to be wasting a lot of time. You're going to get burnout. Mm-hmm. And then now we know it's 19 out of 20 agents don't make it past 24 months.
Well, I was talking to someone the other day and I was looking at their like energy audit and I said, well, this was, driving a check to a broker, like a deposit check. Mm-hmm. And I said, so you're worth $25 an hour? And he was like, well, no. And I was like, well, you wasted. I mean, if you're worth $1,000 an hour, this is a 7-figure agent. Like, this is not like a new agent.
Yep.
I said, if you're worth $1,000 an hour and you spent that hour doing something that a courier would have done for $25, you actually wasted.
It cost them $975.
It cost them $975 to.
And they don't think like that.
As soon as I said it, he was like, oh, and I was like, so if you'd spent that hour doing like a high leverage activity for your business, you would have made more money.
Absolutely. Yep. But they don't know, because you know what? And I'm not saying this as a broad statement, right? To demonize anybody, because a lot of times they're just not taught. And then guess what? Even if you know it, it's still hard to do, right? All these things. Yes. So what we find that they do is that they will say, if I know how much I'm worth an hour, then I have to hold myself accountable to doing those things.
Yes.
So there's comfort in not knowing, right? There's
ignorance is bliss.
It is 100%, right? It is. And I can almost scapegoat it, right? Like, oh, I didn't know. Right. And so I'm okay. And I know that I can still make money and get by and all that kind of stuff. If I know why I was successful, well, crap, now I know that I have to do that same stuff to be successful again. Right.
Well, and the hard question then becomes, would you have paid someone $25 an hour, or that $25 for that hour to be able to spend that hour with your kids?
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. 100% of the time they would.
Yes. Oh, okay. I could probably do like an hour long. Oh, I love this. I love it when I speak to somebody and I'm like, yep, love it, love it, love it. And you get like the goosebumps, when people are talking, you're like, oh, I'm so glad. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about, obviously everything you do is amazing, right? I'm loving everything that you're saying. So how can people get a hold of you? And you said that it was, you talked about like your consulting business, but tell us like, who are you geared towards? Like who is the audience that was like, oh, that's somebody I could help. That's somebody that would benefit by reaching out to me.
So we work with 6-figure businesses, 6-figure real estate agents to help them get to the multiple 7 figures with freedom. The with freedom part is like the most important thing. I am not in the business of building a whole bunch of more burnt out agents out there.
There are enough people who are already applying to do that job.
1,000%. And I refuse to be part of the problem.
Love it.
So, we have two main programs. One of them is basically attraction marketing through digital means, so that you can create the marketing foundations to go from 6 to 7 figures. And then we have our 7-figure agent programs that are team and automation and basically anything that you need in order to get to the multiple 7-figure businesses by working like 4 hours a day. So a lot of it comes down to, and the reason why I've done this is, I feel so passionately about this is, at the end of our lives, and I'm going to get a little heavy for a second, but at the end of our lives, the number one regret that people have is that they work too much. And, I think that real estate is the worst for that, because we lose sight of the fact that we get to do this whole life thing one time. Mm-hmm. And, you should be using real estate as the vehicle to what it is that you want to do in your life. There's not a single person who is listening to this right now who believes truly that they were put on this planet and it is their like mission in life to sell real estate, right? Real estate is the means for you to live the lifestyle and to have the freedom that you want to have. That's why you got into the business in the first place. So it doesn't matter how service driven and how impact driven you are. Yes, you're going to help people along the way, but a lot of this really just comes down to I don't want I don't want to be responsible for a whole bunch of people at the end of their lives saying, I really wish that I'd done things differently.
I love that. Have you ever read the book, 5 Regrets of the Dying?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm writing it down.
There you go. Okay. Yes. So I'm going to be reading your book and then you're going to read this book.
Okay.
And it is, it goes through, it's a hospice nurse. And
I've read an article about that.
Okay. There you go. So, yes.
Yeah.
It's a hospice nurse and they interviewed her because she's obviously spending into their, the last moments with a lot of people. And she said, it always comes down to these 5 things are their biggest regrets. And I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to make you guys get the book.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
Right. And it's amazing. And you get it. And it really reshapes, right, why you're doing what you're doing on a daily basis. You can't. Exactly. Yes. It's one of those things. It is a spaghetti meal, right? When you read that book, you will have another spaghetti meal incident. And then that's what will happen. Jess, I love this. This was awesome. How, give me a website, email. How can people reach out to you to find out more?
Yeah. So our website is thelistingslab.com.
Okay.
And I have a Facebook group that has about 28,000 only agents. There's no random like lenders or anything in there. It's just agents. It's 100% value. It's called the Listings Lab Method for Real Estate Agents.
Okay. And that's on Facebook, right?
It's on Facebook. I put there's new trainings in there every day.
Love it. That is awesome. Jess, I really appreciate you taking the time while you're in sunny, beautiful. We didn't even say that. You now have moved from Toronto.
I have.
And you have built a life, right? To live. Yes. You have used real estate as the vehicle to live the life of your dreams. And now you are living full-time in the Bahamas.
I am.
Yes. So guess what? If you actually want to learn from someone who is doing it and has done it, right? This is the person that you reach out to. That's always one of Jeff's biggest pet peeves is he's got people up there teaching and they have either never done it or haven't done it in 40 years, right? And so he's always like, he goes, oh, that's so frustrating. But all right, Jess, I really appreciate your time. I really enjoyed today's podcast, and I hope everybody else did as well. Guys, remember, if you enjoyed this interview with Jeff, please make sure that you are with Jess. Please make sure that you guys download the podcast, give us a 5-star review. I know that Jess's episode was definitely worth it because she was amazing to listen to. And I hope, Jess, it was great speaking with you. And I hope everybody goes to your website and checks it out. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast and we get to see you next time. Thanks, everyone.